Hey folks, welcome to another episode of 5 to 15 with Musickers. I'm your host, Jason DeCristofaro, and I'm thrilled to be here with Anne Coombs. Anne, it's wonderful to finally sit down and have an interview with you. You are sort of a music business legend in Western North Carolina because you've been the director and founder of so many different schools and other enterprises in this area for many years. You were one of the founders for Asheville Music School, the West North Carolina Rock Academy, and then there was another entity I wasn't even familiar with that you just mentioned.
Music Academy, Asheville. And
no, there's that one.
Give to the Music, a nonprofit.
Give to the Music, yeah. So if there's anybody that understands the ins and outs of the business side of music, particularly being a small business owner in our community, it's you. So I think one of the big things that I'd like to talk about is I know a lot of people who say, I'm going to start a music school, or I'm going to start a small business or an LLC or something of that nature, and they think, oh, anybody can do it, it's easy. But there's a lot that goes into it. What are some of the, I guess, critical first steps in terms of the advice you would give to somebody who's a musician who wants to start a music business, whether it's a school or something of that nature? What are the first steps?
To have a solid business plan.
Yeah,
and definitely maybe get some help with that. And also what I do is kind of test the waters first for things.
What does that mean when you say test the waters?
I was teaching at Musicians Workshop for several years before I started the music school. And what I saw was Musicians Workshop at the time only had 2 or 3 little studios and a drum studio. So I saw a need. So many students were turned away because there just wasn't, the teachers were filled. We couldn't take on any more students. And that's what clicked in my head, is like, the area needs a music school. There is no music school.
Yeah.
And so I kind of tested the waters first, and got a little place on Charlotte Street and built 4 studios. And that was just the beginning of, but testing the waters mean you find a need in the community for something that's not there.
Absolutely. And so at this was in 1990, I think.
1996.
1996. Okay, cool. So at that time, there was a need for this, and of course, there's many of the schools you started and some other schools in the area. In what ways have you seen the business side of, obviously music education has changed a lot, but in what ways have you seen, I guess, the business side of music education change since 96? I mean, it's almost 30 years ago we're talking about.
It's more, what do I want to say, scholastic. Instead of just teaching licks for AC/DC or Green Day or this and that, it actually is more of structures and band and orchestral. When I started the Asheville Music School in 1996, I worked directly with the Asheville Symphony. So there would be, a lot of the instructors, including Bob Baker at the time, who was the symphony conductor, so a lot of the orchestra people were teaching, and they would help advise me on band and orchestral as well as the regular guitar. And I wanted to be an all-encompassing music school when I started that.
That's wonderful. And so what are some of the things when you started out too, in terms of, was it registered as a non-for-profit, an LLC? How'd you have it set up?
At first it was just a doing business as, DBA, and then I went into an LLC. And then the nonprofit, of course, is its own entity, a nonprofit organization. So that was very different. I had 3 other co-founders with me, so there was 4 of us that started that nonprofit, and that was my real dream come true, was to get to that nonprofit. And that was the last thing, the organization that I started.
So for those folks who are looking to maybe start a business, like a new music school or something like that, what would be the pros and cons of a non-for-profit versus a for-profit in your experience?
A non-profit is very difficult. You have to have a good board. You especially have to have a good secretary and finance person, and you have to have grant writers, and you have to keep up with it. And you also have to do reports monthly to the government, to the federal government, things about when the minutes, this and that. So, and you have to establish every report of every penny spent and where it was spent and how. So it's a lot more work, and it's a lot of work to keep a volunteer board. And Give to the Music, we had all volunteer board. Very hard to keep people excited and give their time when it's all volunteer.
That does seem like a challenging thing. What are some strategies that you used or that you would recommend to keep folks engaged when they're volunteering their time?
If you can find people as passionate about your cause as you are, which I'm very passionate, I can sit in front of people and talk for a long time about how I think music education is so important and how music is so important. It's such a connecting force. It's so powerful. And it unites people, and it does all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I know in Rock Academy there were kids that came from different socioeconomic backgrounds. And in Rock Academy, they were all friends. They weren't friends in school, but they were friends when they came into the Rock Academy.
Music was the unifier.
Absolutely, and that was their safe place, and that's what I always wanted.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it gives them confidence, leadership skills. It just gives them a focus that they don't have otherwise through music.
Absolutely.
And I've seen kids just totally transform into confident beings. So the business part is that is finding a volunteer board that is passionate as you are and that understands, really understands what the driving force of music education is.
Right.
And the importance of it.
You don't have to work as hard in the advocacy pitch because they're already on board with you.
Exactly. And they're excited and they're passionate and they understand the effects of it, especially on youth, but on adults too. And we can talk about that later, you know, and how older people, especially midlife and older, that we have an adult Rock Academy class.
Yeah.
And you just see them transform, you know, and it's really something. So there's no age barrier. There's no, people of all ages benefit from music education.
Well, the Rock Academy is such a cool thing because this was at a time when you started, and I think it was in the first decade of the 2000s, right? Mm-hmm. This was at a time when, you know, School of Rock, obviously a lot of people had seen that and that had come out, but there still weren't a lot of rock academies or schools of rock or that type of place. Certainly now there's quite a few, but you were one of the first people in the country to really do that. What was sort of the inspiration or the genesis for that idea?
I'll tell you the truth. I was with cousins in Cleveland, Ohio, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And I saw a pamphlet, or actually my cousin picked up a pamphlet and said, Anne, you need to do this. And it was Paul Green's School of Rock.
Oh, okay.
So getting back to testing the waters, I did summer camps at UNCA first, and then at the Music Center right up here, in their inventory room. And for 2 or 3 summers, I did these summer camps and asked the kids, would you be interested in going to a year-round school like this? You know, so I saw how successful. My first rock and roll summer camp at UNCA, I had like 18 kids.
Wow.
In one camp.
In first year, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So it just kept building, and after the 3rd summer of doing it, that's when Youth at Jazz was doing their thing at Community
That's right,
Center.
Davidson Jones.
Yeah, Davidson Jones. So he let me use on Saturdays after Youth at Jazz my first start before I moved over to West Asheville. So I was testing the waters, and it was just so successful. It was like, okay, leap of faith. I'll get a concrete, brick and mortar place, and a friend of mine did the logo, and we ran with it.
Well, so this brings an interesting point too. I mean, this is, I think, an aspect of the business side that is very difficult just from a logistic, but also from a financial standpoint, which is actually having a location. That's something that's such a critical step that often doesn't get discussed.
Absolutely.
What are some thoughts you have on that? What are some experiences you'd like to share about your journey? Because you mentioned how you were sharing the space with Youth at Jazz. And you finally got your own space, but what does that journey look like? And what, for business owners out there who are getting started, what are some things they should know in the early stages of the process?
What I did was try to find places I didn't have to pay for at first. So if you're matching yourself, say for summer rock camps, you go to a music store, and they want clients to buy retail, and maybe even students there. So that's why I paired with them. UNCA, same thing. They were very nice working with Asheville Music School and my music academy anyway. We worked kind of hand in hand over the years in different ways. So UNCA was the first place, and they let me use the music room. Where we'd hold our recitals for years too.
Very cool.
So partnership is very important, connection and partnership, and trying to work together so it benefits both parties or more than one party.
I think that's just, you hear that, so often: collaboration, partnership, community. These are like buzzwords that get thrown around. But in a very tangible way, how does one foster those connections? What are some of the things that you did to build those relationships and establish yourself in the community?
Well, being a musician myself, and being in Asheville, I started coming here and commuting up here in the 80s for a band. A very popular band at the time called Crimes of Fashion. And then I moved up here in 91. So I've been here in the music community for so long. That's how I fostered a lot of the connections, even the development of downtown. starting with Cafe Square.
Oh, yeah.
And Ted Prosser and Bill Byrne that owned Cafe Square, and his wife Sheila. So it fostered from that, and also connection with my band members that lived here that knew people. So that was very helpful as well. The only reason I didn't move up here in the 80s is you couldn't make a living as a musician here then.
Right, a
I
different
had
time.
to stay in Atlanta. I was working every night.
Yeah. No, Asheville was very different in the 80s than it is now.
And 90s too.
Yeah.
So now it's just like one of the hubs for live music. And here I am. I moved to Florida for 3 or 4 years and COVID happened, so I couldn't get back. When I come back, it's all new, and everybody's saying, do you have a video? I never needed a video.
Right.
Photos before, and it's like all of a sudden I'm having to really scramble for the first time to find gigs.
That media aspect is so unique, I think, because you've been in this going back to in the 80s. You were playing in Atlanta, and now we're in the digital age, right? So, and obviously for musicians, we understand electronic press kits and YouTube and social media is so important. But again, as a music business owner, and somebody who's founded and owned a lot of nonprofits, back in the day, I'm sure it was very different. The brass tacks of it, which you actually had to do. So how have you seen it change, I guess since the 80s to today?
Well, promotion, the marketing, things like that were so different. Branding, now it's all digital. Now it's all social media marketing. Before you didn't have that. You had business cards, banners, you'd show up at schools, giving out maybe free lessons, things like that. It was just completely different.
Do you think those methods, going in person, like visiting schools and things, do you still think that is an effective method still in the digital age?
I found it's not.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, but paper advertising never really did much. And it's very costly. And I like to support my local things, but really not many people are picking up paper anymore. The biggest advertisement we would have every year, and we've done it ever since I started with Rock Academy, is the holiday parade.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah.
I save up the money, or I used to, saved up the money and would spend it on, the floats and the sound and this and that, and that would be my advertising budget. So you have to find what works for you as far as word of mouth and, again, connection and collaboration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think it's harder in this day and age when people are so tied to their phones and so tied to digital things to maybe connect with people and network in a face-to-face way, or has that element remained the same or changed?
It's remained the same, but it's through your device now.
Yeah.
And I miss the personal, you know. But then now a lot of people are used to the device, and it's almost like they don't want to get together and collaborate, or they want to, we're sending each other apps for our set lists or for rehearsal, There's getting together and actually playing, You rehearse through your apps, and so that's all. I guess it is different, but the connection's still the same. It's just very different than it used to be, and I don't know whether it's good or bad. It remains to be seen.
Well, that's kind of where I want to close with here, because for 40 years, well, 30 years, no, almost 40 years actually, you've been in this business side of different music businesses, and not just the education side, but also as a performer and booking and various other aspects. Where do you see it going? I mean, it's 2024 now, and the world is changing. There's lots of things going on with AI and everything else. I mean, what are your predictions, I guess? And it's hard to make, I realize, but if you had to guess, what would you say?
I think it's going to be business as usual, and we're going to go with those changes and adapt and adjust to the changes as we need to. It's really, again, but it all goes back to is collaboration and connection the same through the digital age as it was, or is it better? Do you reach more people? Do you really reach more people? And that would be having to research algorithms and different studies to see and kind of compare them to the back in the day of getting together and word of mouth and stapling posters on telephone poles,
Yeah.
It's probably a wider spread. You probably reach more people, but a lot of people are just spend all their time on their device then, and not personally. So it's very hard to tell. I think that we all have to adapt and adjust.
Wonderful.
keeping up with it is the key.
That is the hard part, for sure. Well, Anne, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Where can folks learn more about the projects you're involved in musically, different businesses you have? Do you have a website or something that people can check out?
On Anne Coombs Music on Facebook, and of course Anne Coombs personally. There's also rockacademy.com, AshevilleMusicAcademy.com, GiveToTheMusic.org. All those have the numbers and all the information. And I'm in a band called Company Swing now. It's an all-woman jazz and blues and a little bit of everything band.
Wonderful.
So we're having our debut tomorrow night at the joint next door.
Wonderful. That would be the 20th.
Yeah.
January 20th.
Yeah. And I'm doing some songwriting stuff, and of course, and
Wonderful.
solo stuff and trio stuff and Biltmore State. And so.
Yeah. Well, thanks for making the time.
Working on a website and video.
This was wonderful. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Jason.
Awesome. Y'all have a great day.